Welcome to Worth It or Worthless, a show where typically every couple weeks we pull a game from my own personal collection of retro games, take off our nostalgia-tinted glasses, and decide, is the game good by today's standards, and is it worth the price of admission? We talk about what the game does well, what the game doesn't do so well, and the things that are just plain weird. But today is going to be a little bit different. Today we're talking about a game that has been 26 years in the making, Streets of Rage 4. I'm your host, Dan, joined as always by my friend Jordan. Jordan, what did we get into today?
Like you said, man, we played Streets of Rage 4 on various platforms, and we had a good time.
Yeah, we did. From the drop, I had a great time with Streets of Rage 4.
Streets of Rage 4 is not Streets of Rage 3, which made it just super enjoyable for both of us.
Okay. I feel like there are things about Streets of Rage 3 that are good, but not being able to change the soundtrack of Streets of Rage 3 really just drags the experience down a whole lot. But fortunately, this is Streets of Rage 4, not Streets of Rage 3. So
we love beat 'em up games. If you guys have followed our show at all, you know that we love beat 'em up games. We've probably covered more beat 'em up games than any other genre. And so when a game that is 26 years in the making comes out, and it's one of the few beat 'em up games, especially one of this caliber that has come out recently, we had to give it a shot. And even though it's not a retro game, it definitely is worthy of our discussion. So that's what we're planning to do today.
Yeah. So do you want to just jump right into what the game does well?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, Jordan. I think the first thing that popped out to me about this game that it does well is the graphics. This game looks like a comic book in motion.
Yeah, and I think that for some people, who are expecting that classic 16-bit pixel style, they may be turned off by that. But after playing this for a while, I really like the decision to change to it. And this may be a spoiler a little bit, but there are lots of the old school pixel graphics for characters that you can unlock if you really want that.
Yeah, I feel like this game, while it's been 26 years in the making, it feels like a game that's coming out 26 years after the last entry. I feel like the modern graphics are a good step forward. I feel like they're good as somebody who enjoys 2D games, and I feel like they're inviting for people who aren't so into retro games as much.
Yeah, there are definitely lots of quality of life improvements in this game, and they made it feel like it's a game coming out in 2020 rather than Streets of Rage 4 coming out a year or two after Streets of Rage 3.
Yeah.
And the new graphic style is definitely easy on the eyes.
Yeah. For sure. The next thing that I have is the game feel is amazing. Your punches feel like they have impact. There's a good amount of screen shake. There's just the combo system is great. The game feels really, really good to play overall.
Yeah, I totally agree. The combat system makes you feel really powerful. And it's not just your typical, jump and punch. You have a whole bunch of combos that you can string together. You have special attacks that, like normal in beat 'em up games, you have these special attacks. And so it takes that tried and true model of you have your attack and then your special attack that takes away your health, but then they make that feel really good because if you string together combos after your special attack, you actually regenerate the life that you lost, and you have a third level of attack, the star attack. And so with the 3 tiers of attacks and this new combo system, you do feel really powerful, and the game feels really good as you're mowing through hordes of bad guys.
Yeah, basically, I feel like this game is probably the best feeling beat 'em up that I've played this generation that comes to mind. I've played a lot of this game over the last few weeks, and it always, I don't know, there's just something about it that I just keep wanting to play it more because the combo system, especially in co-op, just makes you kind of keep wanting to get better at it. And I find that beating up enemies in a beat 'em up always feels really good in this one. So I think it's one of the strongest points of this game.
That's a good point that I didn't really even think about. Playing through it multiple times and trying to rack up those giant combos and those giant scores is thing that makes this game a lot more replayable than some older beat 'em ups that a lot of times you finish them and you're like, wow, do I really want to go through that and do that again? And
Mm-hmm.
this game gives you not just that incentive, because there are things you can unlock too, but the actually having ways to gauge your skill with the different combos and it gives you more reasons to play it again.
Yeah.
Something that stood out to me in this game that I thought it did really well is there's lots of variety. You have a whole bunch of weapons. There's lots of different bosses and good variety in enemies. A lot of times with old beat 'em up games, it kind of feels like you have the very basic assets that you're introduced to in the first couple levels and then they kind of stagnate. But the benefit of this being a modern game is you just have a ton of variety in every area.
Yeah, I agree. This game, while it is definitely true to its roots, it feels like there's a lot of variety as far as enemies, as far as levels. The bosses are all pretty different.
Yeah,
Um, the characters all feel different, the playable characters and the enemies. Um,
absolutely.
the levels introduce, like, there's one level where there's like live wires on the ground that electrocute you if you walk over them at the wrong time. There's another standard level where there's a bunch of holes in the floor, but that's only like one level.
You got that classic beat 'em up elevator level, which
Yep.
you have to have in a beat
Mm-hmm.
'em up, and this one adds a little twist to it where you can actually break out the glass walls of the elevator
Yeah.
and toss. You can either beat them normally, the bad guys in the elevator, or you can knock them out of the elevator and kill them that way. And I loved that. It was a nice little twist on the classic elevator formula.
Speaking on the updated version of a beat 'em up and throwing guys off the elevator, when you fall in a hole or get thrown off the elevator, it doesn't one hit kill you in this game. It's a really nice
No,
modern upgrade.
it's so nice. Yeah, you're doing an incredible combo, like your running attack, and you fall into a hole or go flying off the edge of a building, and instead of losing one of your precious lives, you actually just take a little bit of damage and respawn, and that is a huge upgrade.
Which we should mention with the lives in this. When you're playing through story mode, you start each level with 2 lives and you try to get through the whole level with those 2 lives. And if you fail, then you go back to the beginning of the level. But when you beat the level, you get another 2 lives and so on and so forth. So through the whole story mode, the levels are not the longest levels, but not losing those lives in each level is really important because it still is a challenge. At least on normal difficulty, you only start with the 2 lives. So protecting those lives is something that's really nice that they kind of didn't just find another way to steal your lives, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and 0 counts in this game, which we love, so you actually have 3 lives, and if you rack up 8,000 points within one level, you'll get an additional bonus 1-up. So you could,
Hmm.
especially in single player, it's easier to get those bonus 1-ups.
Yeah.
So you can really have 4 lives to tackle each level, which comes in handy when you run into a difficult boss.
Yeah. And piggybacking on the live system, when you do die, there's an assist system that the game incorporates, which allows you to start the level with an extra life for half score, start the level with a life and a star, I think, for a third of your score, and I think start the level with 2 lives and a star or something for like a quarter of the score.
Yeah, and that's on top of your normal difficulty settings where you
Hmm.
have easy, normal, medium, hard, and so they give you
Mania.
lots. Yeah, mania, which they say is basically just not even fun. Like, good luck, you're gonna die.
The developer calls it unfair.
Yes, when the developer calls it unfair, you know you're in for a bad time. And
Hmm.
actually, mania mode is basically just normal mode on any retro beat 'em up game.
Not quite. It's a little worse than
No.
that. Oh man. Another thing that I have that this game does well is it didn't wear out its welcome after several hours, which is really, really unusual for a beat 'em up. Um, with a retro beat 'em up, like Streets of Rage 3, that game I think was nearly 3 hours long. And by the time we were done with it, we were like done with it. But
Yeah.
as I've gone back to Streets of Rage 4 over and over and over again, I'm always like happy to play it. So I probably have, I want to say 7 to 10 hours into this one already. And I still want to play it more, which is kind of unusual for that much time spent on a beat 'em up in a
Oh,
short
yeah.
period of time.
Especially playing that much of it by yourself, because these games really shine when you're playing it with somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Do you have anything else that stands out for you of what this game does well?
Well, part of that I can expand on, the 7+ hours that I put into this game. There's a story mode, there's arcade mode, and there's boss rush. And then there's a battle mode. Haven't tried the battle mode, but I think that's just fighting your friends kind of a thing.
Huh.
But after the story mode, which has the 2 lives, per level, you unlock the arcade mode, which means you get no continues, but it starts you off, at least on normal, with 5 lives to get through the whole thing.
It's that classic beat 'em
Yeah,
up mode that you'd expect to see in an arcade.
yeah, and it's the mode that I'm finding myself playing now, because it really is more of that old school experience where I want to see if I can get all the way through it. Just haven't had the time to try to stick it all the way through, but
Yeah.
I would like to play through it in arcade mode.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting challenge. Adds an extra level to the game. You can't rely on those continues or that assist mode.
Mm-hmm. The next thing that I have that the game does well is there are a lot of unlockables. There's characters. Your score at the end of each level goes into an overall tally, which allows you to unlock classic Streets of Rage 1 characters, Streets of Rage 2, and so on. And those characters actually have their like original moveset. They don't have some of the nice upgraded features. Like the Streets of Rage 1 characters don't have any of like the crazy attacks that the Streets of Rage 4 characters have. And your like special move is their like super powerful attack from Streets of Rage 1. It's automatically a star attack. They don't have like an extra powerful attack. So if you want to play the game in even like more of an old school mode, you can unlock these classic characters. It's just something else to do. I personally like the Streets of Rage 4 characters the most, but it's just another thing to chase if you're kind of a hardcore Streets of Rage fan. One of the last things that I have that the game does well is it has 4-player local co-op. Beat 'em ups are always more fun with friends. And
Absolutely.
Streets of Rage 4, originally only a 2-player game, but this one brings it into the modern era with 4-player local co-op. Only has 2 players online, but you can play 4 players locally, which I think is just a nice feature.
Yeah, that is awesome. As we always say, beat 'em up games are more fun with friends. And what's better than 2 friends? 3 or 4 friends.
Other than that, I personally like the soundtrack. You personally didn't like the soundtrack, so this might be a good place to pivot to what the game does or doesn't do so well.
All right.
I felt like the soundtrack was really true to Streets of Rage, which is kind of, I think, my blanket statement of what is great about this game is it felt like immediately I was like, oh, this is Streets of Rage. Like this is 100% Streets of Rage made by like hardcore Streets of Rage fans. And to me, the soundtrack really represents that. I think in Streets of Rage 1 and 2, the soundtrack is really good. Streets of Rage 3, I think the soundtrack makes me want to put my head through a wall. So I feel like this soundtrack was really true to the first two games and really kind of fit where Streets of Rage has been in the past.
See, yeah, I was really disappointed with this soundtrack. I found myself wishing that they had a classic chiptune soundtrack. We've seen just some incredible chiptune artists that are making stuff today, and I would have loved to see them get some of those incredible chiptune artists to make the soundtrack for this game. And instead, we got what I thought was not a bad soundtrack, but very forgettable. It
Mm.
sounds a lot to me like stock music.
Yeah, and maybe it is just because you don't have the same level of experience with those original games that I do, but to me it just felt like, yep, this is about what I expected out of this soundtrack,
Yeah, see, I've never played Streets of Rage 1 or 2,
which is
but
a
I was just
travesty.
hoping. Well, I'm sure we'll get there someday on the podcast, but,
Yeah.
yeah, I was just hoping for some awesome chiptune, and instead we got something else.
Your mileage may vary. The very thing, at least we can agree, it's not Streets of Rage 3.
Absolutely. All right, I also sort of have a transition point of something that I thought was funny and good and what you didn't really love, and that's the story. The story is ridiculous and super 90s. It is ridiculous, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The idea is that there's these bad guys who are using music to enslave and take over the whole town. Now, I love that idea. It fits the 90s uh, perfectly. Like the idea that a bad guy is using giant boombox to enslave humanity. Now, the story execution is not great, and I think that may be your problem with it.
So the story is an interesting point, and it does kind of straddle what the game does well, what the game doesn't do well. As a game that seeks to be very faithful to what Streets of Rage is, I think the story works just fine. Uh,
Yeah.
but if you're looking for anything remotely with any kind of substance or anything interesting, you're not going to get it here. It's one of those like, oh, we have to write a story for a beat 'em up. How do we do this?
Yeah, but I think we can all agree that most people aren't playing beat 'em ups for the story, so we can probably give them a break on this one.
Yeah, for sure. I still want to play Streets of Rage. I'll just skip the cutscenes.
Which is a travesty because we love the cutscenes.
Not in this one. The next point that I have on what this game does not do well is there is a lack of cutscenes. Now, this game's coming out in 2020, and there is so much polish and love put into this game, and the cutscenes feel like they're just tacked on. It's kind of like the story is pointless, but the cutscenes really don't help that situation at all. They're basically just comic book page, like slowly moving cutscenes that you would expect out of like a Genesis game or something, which I don't know. I feel like we could have gotten a little more out of the cutscenes in this one.
I totally agree. And I commented to you multiple times as we were playing through that I wish that they had gotten some voice actors and done those cutscenes right, because that was the one spot that felt like really weak to me in the execution and the amount of love they obviously put in this game. It feels like it wouldn't have taken a whole ton of a lot more effort to add real cutscenes and voice acting to this, but it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And I got one more thing for what this game doesn't do well, and to me, this is just a giant injustice, and that's the fact that this game managed to bring back pretty much every single character from the first three games, except for one of the greatest video game characters of all time, and that is Rue, the boxing kangaroo. And they stuff him in the back behind a bar in a level like as like set dressing, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. We're gonna unlock Rue just like in Streets of Rage 3, where you like fight him and then you free him. But no, you walk through a door and you never see him again. And why? Why is Rue not in this game?
Yeah, it's such a weird thing to me that I really genuinely don't understand. Maybe the developers will add him later on, but for as much fan service as we see in Streets of Rage 4, I can't think of a single reason why they would not have included Rue. Because he's a great character. I mean, he's a boxing kangaroo. Like, I don't know. They touched on like all the weirdness in this game. Like Mohawk guy with yellow raincoat, Mohawk guy with green raincoat, weird woman with whip. Like just all the things and no Rue. Like, I don't know. Come on, guys.
They were too busy fitting 4 versions of Axel in it. They couldn't have a single version of Rue. It's a travesty. It's a huge miscarriage of justice.
Oh man, on a little bit more of a realistic, what the game literally doesn't do well note, no block button. I've got a few points here. There's some cheap AI. Sometimes the hit detection feels off. Like, I can't hit a guy who can literally hit me without moving, which is strange. I'm like punching the air, which should be hitting a guy, but it's not connecting with anything. And so, like, all of these things combined to make me feel like there should be a block button in this game, and there wasn't. And so I feel like you take a lot of cheap damage, and it can be really frustrating in these segments when health can be really precious at times. And overall, as good as the game feels, there are those occasional moments where I get frustrated with the game because I feel like it should be connecting, and it's not. And now my combo is broken or I'm dead. And it's kind of annoying.
Yeah. There is a defensive special attack, but it is, you lose life when you do that. So it's a big risk, and it doesn't really defend you as well as a normal block would. So, yeah, I agree. It is kind of strange, especially with how many extra buttons you have now with a modern controller, why there wouldn't be a block option.
Yeah, the defensive special is nice, but you're risking your health if you can't, because you have to gain your health back by doing damage. And so if you're surrounded by guys and you take out 3 of them with the defensive special, you still might get hit by 2 guys coming in the front and the back.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a risk reward. And sure, you can do another defensive special, but then, like, I don't know, 30% of your health is gone.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't get that damage back, then you're going to lose a significant amount of your health bar. And I just felt like, at least give me some kind of option, a better option to defend myself than what I had. With that said, the controls in this game are pretty good. You have a distinct pickup button, which is a nice new upgrade. You have a distinct special button. You have a couple of ways to do a backwards attack. We didn't touch on it and what the game did well, but the modernization of the controls actually was one of the things that this game does well.
You're totally right. They did take the modern controller and utilize those extra buttons for things. Just one of them wasn't a block button.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. The only other point that I have that this game didn't do well is that the online co-op is only 2 players. I feel like we got the 4-player local co-op. I would love to see the upgrade to 4 players online. It's hard to get 4 friends in the same room sometimes. And we enjoyed this game together online, but I would really love to see 4-player online co-op. It's 2020. Like, why not? All right, my friend. Moving on. What do you think you would pay for the experience that we just had with Streets of Rage 4?
I did really enjoy this game. I had a lot of fun with it, but I feel like that $25 price point is a little bit too high.
What would you pay for the game?
I would personally feel more comfortable with this game around $15.
Yeah, I have to agree. The minute I started playing this game, I was like, yes, this is amazing. But after spending, a few hours with it and seeing what's there, it really doesn't. It really feels like kind of a one-trick pony in a lot of ways. The story mode is cool. The arcade mode is nothing more than a rehashed story mode. You've got Boss Rush, which is like it's a nice challenge mode if you want to like learn how to beat all the bosses and kind of challenge yourself, but I really don't feel compelled to like unlock all the characters, or I don't feel super compelled to play this game any more than my other favorite beat 'em ups.
I think that the fact that you can play this game for free on Xbox Game Pass is awesome for people who want to check it out and have that. That's a really nice thing. But for me, I bought it on Switch at 25 bucks, and I'm not like angry that I bought it for 25 bucks, but I would have felt more comfortable spending more like 15 bucks. When you think about that 20 to $25 range, you can buy the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle for that price, and that is a bunch of great games. And so you're right, it does kind of feel like just getting one beat 'em up game for 25 bucks feels a little not great.
Yeah, we should say this game is also available on PC, PS4, Switch, Xbox One. It's pretty much everywhere. Um, it's awesome that it's on Game Pass at launch, but I would say if you're on another platform, maybe wait till you see it in that $15 range. I think you'll be happy at that $15 range, but at the full price, it's hard to say that this game is worth that price of admission. Um, it's definitely a great game, but it's something that you can probably wait to play.
Yeah, if you're a huge beat 'em up fan or a huge Streets of Rage fan, you know, you can run out there and get it at this price, but it feels like this is a game that's gonna go on sale at some point. So I would agree with waiting for it to drop to $15, and I don't think anybody would be upset with this game at that price.
Yeah, so I guess that means that at full price, we got to call it worthless.
That's sort of
That's
the rules of the game.
that's painful. But that's kind of, then we are worth it or worthless. We have to call these things by the binary choice of whether they are worth the price of admission or not. If you have Game Pass, you absolutely have to play this game.
Yep.
But if you don't, but you see it go on sale for 15 bucks, it's worth it at that price. But any other price, probably worthless, or anything more than that.
Yeah, we can use our cop out that we use frequently. This is a game that is not totally worthless, but it is definitely worth less than what it's going for.
Absolutely. All right, my friend. I think that is going to wrap it up for this special edition of Worth It or Worthless. Where can people find us?
You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at WIOW Podcast, and you can find us on YouTube.
Yeah.
Just search Worth It or Worthless. You can also find us anywhere you listen to podcasts by searching for Worth It or Worthless Podcast.
All right, my friend. I think that is going to be it for us. We will talk to you guys soon.
See you next time.
Bye.